Amen. Hey, did they do a good job or what? Hey, good morning, Frontier. So glad to be here again. As you guys heard last week, my whole fam almost came out, and so glad you guys got to meet some of them. I had a really cool story where one of my older sisters, as I told you, not all of them are fully following Jesus yet, but my oldest sister just had such a blast here. Just coming here, the worship, hosting God's presence, and the warmth of His people. At lunch, right after service, she says, Phil, I really want to find a church in Chicago now. So it's like, man, I just sense like all over this country, people are hungry for something real. People are hungry for real love, real purpose, and His name is Jesus. And so I just want to say thank you for just being the church and making us an amazing place where people are safe to explore faith here. You're probably wondering why I'm here again. No, Lee? Tiff was supposed to preach this Sunday, our community group pastor, and I was really looking forward to having her here. Unfortunately, she had a death in the family. Her dad passed away on Wednesday, so we talked on Tuesday, and I said I would fill in. And so if you just remember her, just pray for her and her family. Tiff's one of my favorite people in the world. I feel like her love and her hugs could literally destroy the gates of hell. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like, I just feel for her, so reach out, or don't reach out, give her space, but just think of her and pray for her. That being said, this is the fastest turnaround I've ever done for a sermon. So please give me your grace. Thank you. I'm learning in my Christian life as I'm older that managing pace is one of the most important things I can do for my spiritual life. We live in a breakneck world with breakneck speeds, I don't know if you've ever driven a highway in Los Angeles. You automatically have to go 80, otherwise you're going to get hit, It's just this fast-paced environment that we live in, both in this country and especially in this city. But I'm learning that in order to have a real, vibrant relationship with God, not to lose my sense of self, and to be actually effective in bringing change to the world, I have to manage pace. I have to, otherwise the pace will destroy me. I think some of my favorite Christian thinkers are picking up on this. I'm going to read some quotes that are stirring me. One of my favorite people, Dallas Willard. Do we have quotes up here? There we go. I love this guy. He taught me so much reading through his books. He said, you must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. Hurry is the great enemy of spiritual life in our day. Another really great quote that I really enjoy is from John Mark Comer. He says, if the devil can't make you sin, he'll make you busy. Because both sin and busyness cut off your connection to God, to other people, and to even your own soul. That's deep, right? And I think they're picking up that we live in a breakneck culture. I was doing a little research about this today. Did you know that they did a poll in 2018 and again in 2024 that over 60% of Americans say that they are too busy to even enjoy life. It's funny because you go to work and you become busy in order to enjoy life, and you find that you actually have to work so much that you can't even enjoy life. They did a poll, a Mental Health Institute did research saying over 50% of Americans feel burnt out from the last year from their work. Anybody feel that a little bit? Just a little bit? Okay, it's okay. I feel tired too. Managing pace is so critical, and I feel it is such a timely message for us in our world today, and a skill that I feel every Christian needs in order to have a vibrant relationship with God. Today, we're going to be talking about a not very sexy topic, but a really profound one. It's the subject of the Sabbath. The subject of the Sabbath. As you guys know, the Sabbath is a Christian thing where you work 6 days, and the seventh you rest. I used to think Sabbath was such a simple thing. You just get a day off and you just go binge Netflix for the whole day. Don't show hands. How many of you guys do that? But I'm starting to realize that Sabbath is actually a much more deeply profound spiritual concept that is meant to recreate us in powerful ways. And I want to show us and teach us what that means according to the scriptures. However, my introduction to Sabbath, like many of you guys, it's a very base level understanding. I want to share the story of how I was introduced to the concept of Sabbath, okay? So this is back in seminary, way back when. I decided to live with some guys from seminary. Great guys. My best man, Justin, wanted to be a hospital chaplain. My other friend, David, wanted to tell the whole world about Jesus. And my last friend, Arthur, who wanted to move to Japan to be a missionary. It was a really sweet time where we wanted to move together. We kind of knew each other, but it was kind of intentional living. And we just moved in, started to get to know each other. And the first thing you do when you move in together as grad school students, you go to IKEA. Because that's all you can afford. And so we got one of those cool floating shelves. You ever see those cool floating shelves? They're really cool back in the day. Barely stable, can't barely put anything on it. But they looked good. That's what was important. We got those floating shelves, and it was a Sunday evening. And I was like, great, we just had dinner, and we're like, we're all together. Let's put this puppy up. Let's do it. And as dudes do, when there's a problem, you go and fix it, right? So me and the dudes are starting to get the thing. We're trying to get the level. We get the hammer and the stuff. And the thing about the shelf, it's not difficult. It's just awkwardly shaped. So you need a couple guys, right, to at least hold it level, okay? So here we are. We're about to put this shelf up. And two of my guys, we got one on one side, holding the other, and we just needed one more guy to like mark the level. And so we're holding it here, and we just need one guy. And the Japanese missionary is just standing here watching us do the whole thing. And I'm standing here, and I go, yo, Arthur, can you give us a hand? And I remember this because he looked at us with a big smile on his face. And he said to us, friends, I do not work on the Sabbath. And so we're holding the shelf and go, are you serious? I was like, bro, it's going to take 10 minutes. I just need you to dot the line. And he's standing there smiling. And he says to me, friends, I do not work on the Sabbath. Arthur is the type of guy where he is so genuine. You ever meet someone so genuine in his smile? Just smiling there, just with full joy. So much that you wanted to punch him kind of thing. And I just became so frustrated because we just needed one more guy. And you could help in this moment. We need you. It's just going to take 5 minutes. And this went off for 30 minutes. Just this standoff of me trying to convince him to work and him convincing me that this is a boundary that he has set. And I got frustrated. I got really frustrated. And eventually, long story short, the shelf did not go up that night. But at that moment, as frustrated as I was, it made me curious. I'm like, I was frustrated by him, but I was gave him a little respect. I was like, wow, you have such moral courage that you would not bend even when 3 guys are yelling at you. And it made me curious. Maybe Arthur knows something about Sabbath that I do not. We started living together, and I realized a little bit of his story and why he was the way he was. You see, he was going to be a missionary in Japan, and Arthur loves Jesus to death. And what he realized was that Japan has an incredibly extreme working culture. It's not uncommon for people to work 14-hour days. It is actually socially accepted for you to sleep at your desk because it shows that you're hardworking. It is a hyper-working culture, not too dissimilar from us in America. Of importance to Arthur, he would tell me with great emotion is that he wrote his master's paper on a particular use case where he studied a pastor in Japan that worked so hard, day and night, that he became immobile. He had burnt out so hard that he became handicapped. His nervous system just shut down from the stress. He could no longer preach. He could no longer teach. He could no longer pastor. He lives as a shell of himself. And Arthur would tell me with great tears in his eyes, this is the culture that I'm going to minister to, Phil. And there's something about the gospel of Jesus that is meant to rescue people from this work culture. That was my introduction to Sabbath, and realizing that there is something profoundly deep about this practice. And there was something that Arthur knew that I didn't. And that is what I want to show us today. I want to bring us to a passage in Deuteronomy which talks about the Sabbath. And I guarantee you this is going to open your eyes to how profound this passage is, the practice is. Let's go to the actual passage. I'm going to read it for us because I want us to hear the Bible. John, do you have the full passage? There you go. Okay, I'm going to read it because I want us to, I want you to leave here hearing the scriptures, not me. It says, observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy, as the Lord your God has commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your ox, your donkey, or any animals, nor any foreigner residing in your town, so that male and female servants may rest as you do. Remember, this is really key, okay? Remember, you were slaves in Egypt, and that the Lord your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore, the Lord your God has commanded you to observe the Sabbath day. It's really fascinating to me that this commandment and the context in which it was given. See, it's not just you shall work for 6 days and rest for seventh and then move on. Very specifically and very intentionally, God says, you were slaves in Egypt. You guys catch that? Therefore, you shall rest. There's something really important about that. What I'm learning is that God didn't just deliver his people from Egypt. He delivered them from the work that Egypt necessitated. If you guys are familiar with the biblical narrative of the slavery in Egypt, they had to work all the time. They had to build edifices, artifacts, statues, and they had to work nonstop. They had slave masters with whips that drove them. They had to, if you remember, things got even worse where they had to get their own straw and make their own bricks. In other words, work never stopped in Egypt. And God is saying, you have to practice the Sabbath because I'm delivering you not just from Egypt, but from the work that Egypt necessitated. And what is the work that Egypt necessitated? If you don't know, the work and the labor that Egypt required the Hebrews to do was to build artifacts that the gods of Egypt demanded that they build. Did you know that the 10 plagues are not just by accident or random, but very specifically, whether it's the blood or the gnats or the livestock, God is deliberately attacking and warring against each of the gods of Egypt, one by one. He is disassembling their lordship over Egypt, whether it was the god of the Nile, the god of fertility, the god of the sun, the god of the moon. One by one, the God of Abraham was showing that I am God, and I will destroy the gods that are necessitating this kind of work. Let my people go, that they may worship me. Because I'm a God that does not expect nor demand his people work 24/7. I am the God that demands rest. Because the gods that the Egypt served are no gods at all. And when you serve a God that is not God, you have to work. You have to work because they do not have power over your life. You have to work because they do not control the sun, They do not control the moon. They do not control the harvest. They do not hear you. They cannot see you. So you must work because it relies on you. You do not know whether you will make them happy or whether you will make them mad. So you must work. And God says, let my people go. Because when you follow and worship me, you do not have to work 24/7 because I hold the stars. I hold the moon. I make the crops grow. And so when God is delivering his people out of Egypt, he's not just delivering them out of Egypt, he is delivering out of the work that Egypt demanded. He is delivering them out of what I call anxious work. You see, when you have anxiety, when you feel that the world rests on your shoulders, you go through all the different combinations in your head. Well, if I don't do this, if I don't plant here, if I don't work here, if I don't get this job, I don't work this side hustle, you do all these calculations in your head. That's when anxiety comes. Egypt was the work of anxiety. You had to work. But God was delivering them out of that. You see, work without rest shows that you are living a godless world. But to rest shows that you are living in God's world. It's really profound. The point of the Sabbath is to deliver us from the ways that we have worked. I feel this is such a pertinent reference, and I'm hearing a lot of responses because it's almost like the gods of Egypt are not too different than the gods of America that necessitate nonstop work and hustle. It may not be the god of the Nile, the god of fertility, the god of the sun and the moon, but it is the spirit of poverty. It is the spirit of never having enough. Is it not the spirit of materialism that just surrounds us, that says you should get more and endlessly, that says you need to work and work and work? Is it not similar? And I feel that God is wanting his people to realize that he didn't just call Egypt, his people out of Egypt, he is calling us out. And similarly, to practice the Sabbath, because it is a sign that we are his and his people alone. God, the difference between the people that work tirelessly and the people that understand God as God is rest. It is the Sabbath. The Sabbath is meant to deliver us from the ways that the world demands that we work. I feel this temptation. As I mentioned over and over again, I feel this. I work a few jobs. I got 5 kids to feed. You know, we're doing fun stuff. Me and Daniel are doing a podcast. I got a marriage to uphold and pursue and love. And I feel every week just that voice. You got to do a little more. Anybody feel that, hear that voice too, or just me? And I'm realizing that Sabbath isn't just a day of rest. Sabbath is resistance. Sabbath is resistance to the ways of our world that are not like God's. It is resistance and refusal to live in a world where it completely rests on me. And I'm learning that as I rest intentionally, as I choose it, amidst all the pressures of life, it feels like I have to push and press against it and say, rest and Sabbath is my resistance, because I do not follow the ways of this world. I follow my Father's world. And in his world, I don't have to work all the time. I shared last week, I get so encouraged when I rest, because the day goes by and you come into Sabbath with all your anxieties, all your worries, and the projects that you didn't finish in the week, and then you just rest and realize, the world didn't blow up when I rested. It's kind of a good feeling. And I feel like that is actually instructive for us, that God holds the world in our hands. I know some of you guys will say, I'm a rest when I feel less anxious. Can I just say to you that you will feel less anxious when you rest? Something I'm learning about spiritual practices is that sometimes the body follows the spirit, but sometimes the spirit follows the body. What I mean by that is if you just force yourself to Sabbath and rest, your spirit actually will come alongside of that and will trail behind that. That's why they call it disciplines and practices. You force your body to do it, and then your spirit comes along. So Sabbath is a way that God is rescuing us from the way that we worked. Secondly, I'm learning that Sabbath is not just rescuing us from the way we worked, but it's actually helping us in the way that we work now, which is amazing. And I know that some of you guys sitting here, you're like go-getters. Any go-getters in this room? Okay, it's okay. I'll just stand alone. Just, passionate. You're like, I don't want to rest because I'm passionate about life, I want to give you an encouragement. Sabbath actually helps you to do better work. Can I say that? One of the things you read in the Bible is that they call it the 7 days of creation, right? Isn't it fascinating that it's not the 6 days of creation? You ever notice that? It is the 7 days of creation. In other words, it's not 6 days of creation and then rest. No, it's actually 7 days of creation. In other words, rest is a part of creation. In other words, work without rest is not creation. Work without rest is slaving. But work with rest is creation. I had this fun pun that I thought about, which is rest is not apart from creation. Rest is a part of creation. You see it? Can I do dad jokes here, or is that not allowed? I feel like I had to type it because you wouldn't be able to tell if I said it. I'd have to have an awkward space part. It just wouldn't hit as hard. But yeah, rest is not apart from creation. Rest is actually a part of creation. It actually makes you work better. It actually makes you more creative. I actually have this vision that I feel like God gave an inspiration of how the first Sabbath went. When God put Adam and Eve to work in the garden, he says, go take dominion of the earth over the world. And the garden was the starting point. And so they would work and they would plant and they would, do this and plant this bush over here and plant this apple tree over here and whatever. And then 6 days would go by. And then God's like, that's it. We're going to take a break. And Adam's like, but we were just in the middle of but God's like, it's 6 days and we rest on the seventh, my son. And Adam's like, all right, fine. And so they would just sit on the log. It'd be God, Adam, and Eve, and they would just kind of marvel at their work. And Adam's just kind of fidgety, but. And God's like, shh, just chill for a second. Just chill. And as Adam and Eve kind of stopped being fidgety, they would just kind of remark at their work and start talking with God. And Adam's like, hey, God, isn't that cool what we did? I really like planting this tree over here. And God's like, yeah, wasn't that cool? And then Eve's like, yeah, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we moved this over here and all that jazz? And then God's like, yeah, that was really cool. And in my head, I love this little intimate connection. And for me, God gave me that once because he wanted to tell me that what the Sabbath was for. Sabbath wasn't just for, Sabbath is, for 6 days you work, but there's a part of Sabbath that is actually designated for dreaming. There's a part of Sabbath that's just reserved for daydreaming, for wondering, for just looking and assessing. And I find that there's a space dedicated just to let your mind be creative. I'm realizing that actually science is starting to support this. I read a really good book a few years ago called The Organized Mind, which is a book that's kind of trying to treat the disease of attention deficitness. and how we have so many things bombarding our attention. I learned a really interesting thing in that book. He's talking about how basically your brain has two modes in it. I'm going to butcher it, but just understand the principle, okay? There's active mode and there's passive mode, okay? In active mode, that's an exact picture of your brain, by the way. In active mode is like you're doing work, right? You're at your desk, you're like crunching your Excel sheet, you're like, yeah, I got my macros in, you know? You're out in the field, putting shelving up, you're like working. Active mode is when you're working. But then inactive mode is when you're not working. So your brain actually goes into kind of hibernation. Like, so you do work and you take a break. But did you know that your brain actually doesn't stop working? It's actually like doing stuff in the background. And the things, like the problems, you ever like work actively but you couldn't solve something? It's like, I'll get to it next time. And then you go take a break. Did you know your brain is actually trying to solve problems in the background without what you're knowing? You ever have this feeling of like you're taking a shower or like you're on the john and like it just comes to you? You ever had that moment? It's like, ow, I got it. Well, that's your inactive brain at work. Like you gave it instructions to go solve this, and it actually went and solved this without you doing anything. Isn't that amazing? And one of the cool things about the book was saying was that these two modes are actually mutually exclusive. You can't enter into creativity mode when you're in active working. In other words, you have to stop working in order for your brain to be creative. Isn't that wild? And so this to me like demonstrates such a cool part about Sabbath. It's like it actually helps you be more creative. I feel like that's how God intended it. I'm going to tell you right now, some of my best ideas in life and in family and work come on my Sabbath. Whether it's my daddy-daughter dates or questions I want to ask my wife on our dates or all the ceremonies that we do in our house, like I guarantee you some of my best life-changing activities come when I rest. And some of you guys say, man, that's a hack. That's a life hack. I'm going to tell you this is God's design. The Sabbath is meant to help us do better work. I guarantee you if you leave here committing to practicing the Sabbath, you will actually be a better worker. You will actually be a better husband. You will actually be a better wife and a mother because you've given your brain creativity to actually do the things that God has called you to do. Isn't that cool? All right, so God gave the Sabbath to rescue us from the work that we did do. God gives it to us so that we can actually do good work now. And not only that, God gives the Sabbath so that we can do better work in the future. I'm going to explain what I mean by that. I'm going to show two passages from the Gospels. And these are two passages that talk about the disciples returning from hard work. It is fascinating, like absolutely fascinating to me, Jesus' response to the disciples after they worked really hard. Can you show the passage, the one where there's back to set? There you go. Okay. So this is likely describing the similar events, or the same or similar events, okay? So just pay attention to how Jesus responds to his disciples when they come back from hard work. So the first one is Jesus sending them out to do his work, casting out demons, healing the sick, feeding the poor, everything. So the 72 disciples come back. The 72 returned with joy, saying, Lord, even the demons are subject to us in your name. And he said to them, Jesus said, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Behold, I have given you authority to tread on serpents and scorpions and all over the power of the enemy, and nothing shall hurt you. And this is really key. Nevertheless, do not rejoice in this, that the spirits are subject to you, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven. What a rebuke. What a correction. Okay, we'll talk about that. Second time, okay, the apostles returned to Jesus and told him all that they had done and taught. And he said to them, come away by yourselves to a desolate place to rest a while. For many were coming and going, they had no leisure even to eat, and they went away in the boat to a desolate place by themselves. That's fascinating. Jesus doesn't like commend them for their work a little bit, you know? He doesn't say, go get more. He's like, in instance one, his message was, yeah, you did this, but rejoice better that your names are written in heaven. In other words, don't let your work become your identity, disciples. And the second one is, come rest. It is interesting if you kind of combine Jesus' instructions. There's a sense in which rest is the rescue from us making our work our identity. And it's because in rest, it creates the conditions for us to be loved by God apart from the things which we trophy our lives on. Okay, this is a deep principle, so I'm going to explain it with a story from my life. Sabbath started becoming more regular around 2020 for me. And that's when, as you know, the world was on fire. Things were going crazy, and the Lord wanted me to start practicing and making Sabbath a regular part of my life. And so, as I said last week, I just would go out, be by myself, sit and stare at trees. And I remember just being so squirmy. You ever feel that? You're supposed to rest, but you feel squirmy? Anybody else? Just me? Okay. You don't know how to rest. You got to get up to do something. You got to fix this. You got to do that. You got to do this. You got to do that. And I was just like, I don't want to be here, God. This is a waste of time. And I remember what the Lord was teaching me. He's like, Phil, do you know why you're squirmy? And I was like, why, God? He's like, because you don't know who you are apart from your work. You don't know how to sit with yourself when you don't have your trophies. You see, in rest, we come naked before God. When I'm sitting there resting, I have none of the things that I would gladly put on my resume. I have no accomplishments. I have no people around me. I have nothing to boast in. I come completely naked before God. And God was teaching me, this is exactly how I want you to come to me. Without your trophies. Without the things that you would use to shield and to show off to people how great and awesome you are. I want you to come rest because I want you to come without any of those things. And I want you to learn how to simply be enjoyed apart from your work. You see, when you make work your identity, how do you guys know that you do a bad job? When you make work your identity, you'll work nonstop because you are chasing that which work will never provide for you. A sense of love, a sense of identity. Work was meant to be a bonus. We were first meant to be sons and daughters of God. Work is extra credit. Did you know that? The day I met Jesus is the day my life was complete. Everything else I do is extra credit. This is just the fun stuff. And the Sabbath instructs and reforms my heart to not make work my identity. That temptation that I resist the things that go, yeah, I'm Phil, I'm X, Y, and Z. This is what I did 10 years ago. This is what I did last year. This is why I'm great. This is who I know. This is how much money I have in my bank account. All this nonsense. And God says, come rest a while to his disciples. Come rest. Don't rejoice in this. Come rest with me. Just come rest. Learn how to be loved without your work. And it's funny because when you learn how to be loved by God apart from your work, how many know that you do better work? It's one of those oxymoronic things. When you work for identity, you do a bad job. But when you work from a place of knowing who you are, you actually do a better job. Because the performance anxiety goes away. And you're just overflowing out of a place of knowing who you are. I want to encourage some of you guys, when you guys start practicing Sabbath, just start casually talking to the Lord. It's what I've learned to do. Just like like a car ride, like a road trip. You ever sit with a friend and there's just really fun enjoyment? Just learn how to sit with God in your life and go, hey, Jesus, what do you think about this? What do you think about me? What do you think about what I'm doing? And just learn to talk to God on your Sabbath. Let him enjoy you. Let him love you. Let him just bless you. The most famous image in my head of this, obviously, is Jesus' baptism. That story wrecks me every time, where he gets baptized before he does his ministry, and he hears a voice from heaven says, "This is my son in whom well pleased." And it's like so profound to me because Jesus, the Father said this before Jesus did anything, any work, not after he did it. He didn't do it. Jesus didn't teach one thing yet. He didn't raise one person from the dead. He didn't heal a single person yet. He didn't cast a single demon out. And the Father says, "With you I am well pleased." And that's what the Sabbath is for. And I want you to hear those words over your life apart from your work. Did you know that your Father is pleased with you? I don't care what your boss said to you or your coworkers ratting on you, but your Father is deeply pleased with you. And you get to experience that every Sabbath. So the Sabbath is delivering us from the work we did. The Sabbath helps us to do work now. And it helps us to do work better in the future. It's the total package, guys. It is really amazing. I know this sounds really great, but I actually want to leave you a little bit with some practicals. Can I do that? Because I don't want you to leave here going, "Oh, that sounds good," but I want you to actually practice it next week. Is that cool? I could write a book about this, but I only have 3 things to help you make it practical. So I did write a book about it, so yeah. Making Sabbath practical. Number 1, make it planned. This is really ironic, or one of the things, how many of you guys tried to rest, but you didn't have a plan, so you just ended up watching TV? Anybody? It's an ironic thing to say, but I want you to plan your rests. Because when you don't plan your rest, you will default to whatever your flesh wants. And whatever your flesh wants is probably not restful. It sounds ironic, but I want you to plan it in such a way where you're excited about it. Can you do that? So I don't want you guys to not look forward to rest because you don't know what you're going to do, but what would you do on your rest? Esther and I, we love going to coffee shops. So that's what we do. We just love just the feeling of no kids around us, just sipping on that $7 latte. It was 3 years ago. But it's just just being in a place where no one needs us and just journaling and talking to Jesus. Plan your rest. Think about what makes you excited to do, And do not make scrolling one of them. It will not make you rested. Can I just say that? Number 2, make it personal. This is related to the first one, but what really gives you life? I feel like everyone ticks a little bit different way. So I just want to encourage you, what will give you life? I know Casey likes going fishing. Casey, where you at? I don't like fishing. You'll never find me fishing on my rest day. I'll be stressed, But bless you, you do that. What gives you life? Make it personal. You know you. Ask the Holy Spirit, what's really life-giving for you? Lastly, make it ceremonial. I talked about ceremonies last week, but our family very clumsily started practicing Shabbat dinners. How many of you guys know about Shabbat dinners? Historically, the Jewish people have celebrated the Sabbath with a big feast on Friday nights. And as I said last week, what I love about ceremonies is that it tells a story. And the story, when Shabbat happens, is that we're going to rest because we can, because we're going to celebrate and not work, because as we enjoy this meal and as we enjoy this weekend, God's in control. And so it's a beautiful ceremony, and you could adapt it to yourself, but there's lighting candles, there's washing of hands, you can throw in some communion in there. My favorite part is the blessing, where Esther and I bless our kids one by one. We give them blessings. And each of our kids gives us a blessing. And it's this beautiful, I love blessings because it's a sign of overflow, that we live in our Father's world and we can bless each other. And ceremonies, it's just a powerful way to reinforce what story and what world we live in. So those are just 3 practicals I wanted to give to you guys. I want to invite up Josh. Josh, where you at? Come on up. Josh is, everyone give him a hand. I wanted Josh to come up and share a really cool testimony. I had a lunch with him and beginning to know him. He's part of my community group, and he's a really unassuming guy. He's super quiet, but he's just rock solid. And he's just a man that I respect a lot. But he's been making Sabbath and rest more part of your life. I'm not going to tell their story for you, so I just wanted him to share it. You want to do that? All right. Here's Josh.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Josh. I'm sure you know my wife, Amy. She's pretty well known here, but I'm pretty quiet. While I was listening to Phil speak today, it just kind of occurred to me that I'll be 40 years old in a few months. And when you talked about like from slavery to freedom, and I just realized, wow, it took me 40 years to enter into freedom. Since I was born until now, I was a slave to performance, working hard, and just hustle and grind. So that just kind of hit me, and yeah, praise to God. Like He has His timing, and so I'm glad it's done now. But it shouldn't have taken 40 years, but I'm glad it did. Okay. All right. So I just want to share a quick testimony, a story. So since I was young, I had this problem of just working hard and just pushing through and getting things done. And I think a lot of it is because just the way I grew up. Single mom. My dad left when I was 3, orphanage a little bit, and I was adopted when I was 13 years old. Came to the States, and then you come to the States when you're 8th grade. You have to learn English, and you always feel like you have to, catch up. So I always felt like I'm behind. So I'm doing all these things, and then when I was 15 years old, my mom from South Korea, she literally crossed the Mexican border illegally. Because I couldn't stay in the States anymore. So then I was 15 years old, living with an illegal, parent, and just, broke, and just life was hard. So I just, had to push and, again, hustle and grind to do things. So I got my first job when I was 15 and a half. I worked at a Boston market. I was cleaning chicken butt. And I never stopped working from 15 and a half through 33 years old. That's for about 18 years. And through college, through dental school, I was just nonstop working. And when I was 33, I couldn't work anymore because I became disabled. So I was in the military. I had a neck injury, and I left the military on a medical discharge because I just couldn't work. And at that moment, I realized I just don't know how to rest. And I realized I was addicted to progress and achievements, really. So when I was 33, I left the military, and we all moved to Taiwan. And I spent a year in Taiwan not doing anything. I have the dental degree, I have all these, accolades and all these, good things on the resume, but I just couldn't do anything in life. And it was one of the hardest thing I had to deal with. And kind of like what you shared, I was just sitting there naked, and I'm I have nothing to show for it. There's nothing I can do. At the time, I was in a lot of pain, so I couldn't hold my, firstborn, Lily. I couldn't even hold her for more than 10 minutes because, my neck was hurting so much. And then every morning, I would go to the beach, and then I would just sit on the beach and just praying to God. And God told me, son, this is what I want you to do. I want you to learn how to just sit with me. And during the time, the verse I really reflected a lot was, about the story about Mary and Martha. Mary was sitting at the feet of Jesus, listening and spending time with him. Martha was busy doing all these things, serving Jesus, right? And Martha got upset. Hey, Jesus, look what Mary's doing. She's not doing anything. Tell her to do something. And Jesus said, Mary hasn't chosen the most important thing, right? She has chosen the good portion, and only one thing is necessary. The necessary thing is spending time with God and building relationship and intimacy with Jesus. So even though Holy Spirit kept impressing that verse on my heart, I just couldn't change how I was, because I was like that from 0 to 33 years old. And so I just kept pushing on, and my health got better. So a couple of years ago, I started dental practice in Pasadena, and my work ethic and my drive and everything just kicked in again. And I was just working nonstop, 14, 15 hours a day, 5-6 days a week, to a point where I didn't have Sabbath rest. I didn't, have time to spend with my wife, my kids. I'm sacrificing my physical, mental health, and I just couldn't change myself. And I felt like I can't go on like this anymore. This is just not healthy. There's got to be a better way. So I was really praying about how to, be free from this addiction of working hard, and really it's the anxiety, right? You feel like, even when I was a kid, I had to do everything on my own because I had no parents, no backup, no one can support me. So I think it was just kind of combination of anxiety and how I grew up and everything. But I'm like, this is a time I have to change, because I don't want my children to live their life the same way. So a couple months ago, I went to the men's retreat, and a few things happened from that time until today. It's been about several months, and one of the verses that really helped me be transformed was when I was riding up the mountain. I just kept hearing this verse, Psalms 121, and it says, "I look to the hills, and where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth." And that verse just really hit me hard while I was driving up the mountain. And I kind of like you shared, I realized it doesn't like rest on me. Like this mountains and everything, the universe is sustained by the hands of God. And I don't have to do everything to hold things together. And another verse that really impressed my heart recently was Proverbs 10:22. It says, "Blessing of the Lord brings wealth without hard toil for it." Or another translation, it says, "without suffering," right? So I'm trying to get things done and hustle and grind and do crazy things to make ends meet and to prosper, but I'm not doing it in God's way, and that leads to burnout, and it's just not sustainable. And the other verse I shared was the Mary and Martha story, and the last one is when Jesus tells us, and Susie, you shared, I was going to share it, but Jesus says, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I'll give you rest." He says, "Take my yoke upon you, learn from me, and walk with me," right? So this is something I'm really trying to live by now, and your message and everything just came in such a timely manner. And had I listened to this message when I was, 6-7 years ago, I don't think it would have had the impact. But I just think it's amazing. God has His timing, and He knows what He's doing. And I wish I had learned this lesson and made the changes when I was younger. But I give God all the praise, and yeah, He's working in all of our lives. And now my priority has changed. Spending time with God in intimacy, that's number one. If I build something, I don't build with God, it means nothing. So I thank you, Phil, for the message and everything you've shared. Thank you.
Man, thank you so much, Josh. Let's stand. Worship team, can you come up?